Hello everybody and welcome to my review of volume number 2 of Nisioisin's light novel series, Nisemonogatari. This of course is the ongoing Monogatari series. This one is book 6 of that series. If you want to pick up your own copy, you can. I've got links in the description to both Amazon.com as well as the book depository. This one is released officially in English by Vertical. Just as volume number 1 of Nisemonogatari featured the one sibling of Koyomi Araragi, in this volume we now feature his youngest sibling, Tsukihi. Now, Tsukihi, just like her older sister Karen, finds her situation complicated by aberrations. And Koyomi finds himself, of course, having to once again take on the role of the protective older brother and to solve this problem to protect his youngest sister. In the midst of this story, we're introduced to two brand new characters, Yozuru Kagenui as well as Yotsuki Ononoki. These two are very interesting characters and very different from many of the other characters that we've had introduced in the series so far. They are another in the line of spiritualists who have come to this town. Of course, we have had Oshino, who was in most of Bakemonogatari, the sort of very aloof Hawaiian shirt-wearing guy who didn't really help you, but kind of you helped yourself solve the problem. Then, of course, we had Kaiki, who was introduced in the previous volume, who is more of the con man spiritualist. And now we have these two, which are their whole own kind of spiritualist and have their own way of dealing with aberrations. And it shows you how, even in terms of dealing with these, as varied as these aberrations can be, apparently the way to deal with them can be just as varied. Also keeping in line with what we saw in Nisemonogatari number 1, this book features actually a human sort of antagonist in the same way that Kaiki was the antagonist in volume number 1. We have a human antagonist in volume 2, which makes it a little bit different. It's not just a matter of solving an aberration problem. It's also dealing with human beings and how do you solve some situations when, you're trying to be a decent guy and, not kill people. So we have that in common again. This one, of course, it's very much in common with volume number 1 in that it is focusing on family. The relationship in this one of Tsukihi as well as Koyomi as her older brother. We saw some of Tsukihi in the first volume, and we found out, basically one of her most defining character traits is her temper and how her emotional state can flip-flop from one thing to the other. We see that to put to comedic effect a little bit in this volume, but we do learn a lot more about who she is as a person, and it makes her quite a bit more of an interesting character other than just being the hot-headed sister who flies off the handle. Keeping with the family theme of this book and this, arc of the Monogatari series, the other characters that have spent a great deal of time with us since Bakemonogatari are, in some cases, hardly in the book, and in some cases altogether absent. So Hachikuji is in the book, of course. I think Hachikuji kind of fills that old wise man role. She's always that character that provides some insight to Araragi, even though it seems just like mindless banter going back and forth between the two of them. I almost feel like that's part of the reason how Nisioisin justifies Araragi's sexual harassment of her as a character, in that he writes her as so much older and more in control of their relationship that it doesn't feel like Koyomi is assaulting a grade school child. It's such a slippery slope, and it gets even a little bit weirder in this book, and I will definitely get there eventually in discussing this. So in any case, Hachikuji is in the book. She does fulfill the same role that she typically does. However, Kanbaru is very, very little in the book compared to many of the others. She's hardly in it at all. Sengoku is only mentioned by name a couple times. Hanakawa is only in the book basically in a short telephone conversation. And Senjo Gahara is absent from the book as well, which is probably the one that surprised me the most. In fact, she is only talked about, and talked about in a way that I kind of thought, like, wow, this is huge. Like, we should be seeing this. We shouldn't just be being told it. And what I mean is that her personality has apparently had a big turn since the events of Nisemonogatari Volume 1, but we're just told about it. Araragi just tells us, oh yeah, this is what's happened now. This is who she is now. We don't see her. We don't see any of this really in practice. We're just told. So really, the book, in terms of its characters, it focuses on the two new characters of Ononoki and Kaganui, and other than that, it is basically Araragi, his two sisters Karen and Tsukihi, and Shinobu, of course, the vampire that resides in Koyomi's shadow. This volume was supposed to be the end of Monogatari, or at least that is what Nisioisin basically says at the end in the afterword. Of course, by the time he's writing the afterword, he's decided that it's not going to be the end, that he wants to write more. But he does say that when he was writing the book, that was what was in his head. And in a lot of ways, you really can tell, because to me, this volume has all of the really good things of the Monogatari series, as well as the more seedy and naughty bits of the Monogatari series and the darker, dirtier bits of the Monogatari series, all played out in this one volume, almost as like a bookend to kind of say, hey, here's what the whole series has been from point one all the way up until now. Of course, the one way that most of those things are related is through the whole theme of fakes. And it's appropriate, of course, because the subtitle of the Nisemonogatari series is the fake tale. And in volume number 1 of this, we had that most made evident in terms of false aberrations, the false spiritualist of Kaiki, and also we had some of that discussion between Koyomi and Karen about Justus, and about how Justus can, in a lot of ways, be fake, even when you are kind of convinced that you are on the right side. That theme gets expanded a lot in this volume, and in some ways that it becomes heartwarming, in some ways that it just becomes very interesting and intellectually engaging, and in other ways that it just becomes really sleazy. So let's talk about the sleazy parts first, because, well, I'm sure that's what you're all been waiting for. I do apologize. There were a couple of you that were like, I want to see you read chapter 3 on camera. And I was going to, but unfortunately, the only way that I could read this book was in a place and times where I really couldn't set up a camera. I really did mean to. I thought it would be kind of funny just to put it out as a joke, but I couldn't. In fact, chapter 3, I didn't even get through the whole chapter in one go. I had to read it in bits and bites. But so let's talk about the sleazier parts of this book and how it relates to the whole fake tale. And first of all, let's just say that it is in terms of the sleazier bits that I would say we have the clearest indication that Araragi is a unreliable narrator. He tells us so often things that he is not, and then his actions seem to say the exact opposite. So, for instance, his molestation of Hachikuji. He tells us that he's not into lollies. He tells us that he's not a lolicon, and yet there are numerous points, not even just his treatment of Hachikuji, even in terms of some of the conversations he has with Shinobu, that would suggest that, oh yes, he is very much a lolicon. We have him tell us numerous times that he feels nothing in terms of like lust or anything like that for his sisters, and yet we have the infamous toothbrush scene, which is such an obvious metaphor for incest and sex. And then we have him groping his other sister. We have him stripping one sister and then tying her up so he can inspect her skin, which actually does kind of tie in plot-wise, but yeah, it's a pretty thin tie-in to plot and really didn't need to be done in such an extreme manner, but we do things extreme here in Monogatari land. So we have this sort of sleazy bit, and it's kind of funny to me when I'm reading it, I think Nisioisin, like I've read now other works by him. I've read Juni Taisen. I've read book 1 of the Zaragoto series. I don't know whether that series changes as it goes on, but there's really none of this really heavy, overt sexual discussions and you know, metaphorical sex and stuff like that in his other works. And it's funny to see it played out here in such an overt manner. And it's almost like this series is just kind of his series to just let go and do whatever he wants. And that's why characters talk about whatever he wants them to talk about, and why they play word games the way that he may want to play them. And in this case, it's like everything that he's doing is poking fun at us, right? Hachikuji, we have the whole lolicon thing, but oh, she speaks in an incredibly adult way. She controls pretty much the relationship between her and Araragi in many ways. And of course, she's not even human. She's a spirit, and probably a spirit that is even older than Araragi. Same thing with Shinobu in last volume. She had a bath with Araragi. And again, it's that whole, she's not really a lolly though, because she's over 500 years old, and all she has to do is suck a whole lot of blood out of Araragi and she'll grow up, she'll get older. We have that. We have this whole, they're not really having sex. He's just brushing her teeth. Yeah. and then there's the whole groping thing with him and his sisters, and he basically is like, yeah, no, I'm not into it. And then yet later on he's kind of like, I gotta protect them so I can keep groping them. Yeah, like like I said, it was almost like Nisioisin was kind of like, yeah, it's the last book. I'm just gonna go all out. We're just gonna go all for it. And like I said, it's almost like he's using that whole fake theme to apply to these things. Like he's not making it overt. Well, it is overt. What am I saying? It's very overt. But he's faking you out by saying it's not really what you think it is. He's just, yeah. So we have that sleazy element. And of course, we've had that sleazy element in Monogatari. I'm not saying that it hasn't been present there. I mean, Araragi has always been a little bit of a perv and a little bit inappropriate. And, you know, even Kanbaru is the same way. But it hasn't quite been played out, I would say, as out there as it was in this book. So we have that. And admittedly, there were times that I was a little bit uncomfortable with some of that stuff. But then we have the book use that same whole idea of fakes in ways that are so engaging. So one of the main philosophical arguments, and it ties very much into the plot, is the idea of what has more value, a fake or the real item. And the arguments for and against the various ways of looking at it are very interesting and all bring up incredibly valid points. And there is also this sense of heart at the middle of this book as well. This warmth of family and accepting your family even if they have faults, even if they are in some ways fake. I mean, we have Araragi, who's kind of a fake human in a way, and he and Shinobu have come to sort of accept each other, even though she is kind of a fake vampire. And their relationship is based on betrayal, essentially. And We have his relationship with his sisters changing and evolving over these books. And some of it is, just both sides accepting the ugly parts of the other because they realize that there's still value there and this love and affection and worth of family. So in a lot of ways, the book at its heart has like this very interesting philosophical sort of argument, and B, this really kind of touching, heartwarming, we can love each other as a family even if we are fakes and liars and deception and failures and all of those things. It's very, very interesting, this book. I found myself, like, when I finished it, I know that there's more, of course. We have Nisemonogatari Black coming out in, I think I just read that it's been delayed until December, which kind of sucks, but it was supposed to be out near the end of this month. So we have that coming up, which of course is going to tell us what happened during Golden Week, which we've all been waiting for. So when I finished this, I knew there was going to be more, but I found myself really interested in seeing where this series is going to go. I mean, there's a lot of things that come out in this book, like there is a connection between Kaiki, Kagenui, and Oshino. And we have these three individuals that are connected by something and yet are so vastly different as people and as how they're approaching aberrations and everything else that I can't help but be really curious and wonder if we're going to explore that more. We have Senjo Gahara. We have this information that she's somehow different, and I'm very interested to see who she is going to be when she returns into the series. Hanakawa, I've always kind of liked her character, so I'm kind of looking forward to a book that's going to feature her more. And of course, we've had all these hints dropped about Golden Week. It's going to be really cool, I think, to see how that plays out. And in fact, The Cat's Tale, the last story of the Bakemonogatari arc, was my favorite of all of them. So again, I'm very looking forward to Neko coming out. And this book, when it ended, when all was said and done, I thought, we've done more expanding on the world. We've done more expanding on these characters. And if we kind of leave out the naughty bits, it actually is a really, really well done novel and has a lot of satisfying parts to it in terms of, the development of the characters and their relationships. And just as the same way that Bakemonogatari left me interested to see what happens next with the exit of Oshino, this one ends with me very interested in where the series goes from here, because we have sort of a reset of a number of the characters' relationships. I'm kind of interested to see if that just gets ignored when Nisioisin continues like sort of the main story, or whether that's going to be acknowledged and just where this series goes from here. And like I said, there were a lot of characters we didn't see much in this volume that I'm interested to see where their stories are going to go. So all in all, Nisemonogatari Volume number 2, another really good volume in the series. Yes, it certainly takes the naughty bits to further extremes than it has, I would say, in any of the other books. And yet it compensates and makes up for those things by having a really good, strong, philosophical, and kind of heartwarming core to it. So those are my thoughts on volume number 2 of Nisemonogatari. My next review is going to be on a brand new series that J Novel Club has just released, and that's going to be volume number 1 of Outbreak Company. This one, a sort of isekai via government, via otaku culture. Yeah, it sounds kind of interesting, and that will be my next review. So if you're brand new to the channel and you love light novels, you should consider subscribing. I do 2 to 3 reviews every single week, as well as a weekly countdown of the top 10 best-selling light novels in Japan. Thank you so much for joining me in this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.